Today, we're exploring the psychology of people who never want to leave the house, and why their minds function so differently from those who can't stand being home alone. First, let's clarify what we're talking about. This isn't agoraphobia, a clinical fear of leaving safe spaces. This isn't depression keeping someone isolated from others. This is a genuine, conscious choice of home over almost any external alternative offered to them. Psychologists call this home-centered orientation, and it's far more common than you think. These are people whose natural state is contentment within their own four walls. Their home isn't a place they retreat to when the world becomes too much. It's their preferred environment, their foundation, the place where they truly want to be, their safe place. And here's what's fascinating. This preference often goes hand in hand with specific personality traits and psychological patterns. High introversion is perhaps obvious, but also high autonomy, the need to control your environment and schedule. Low need for excitement. They don't need novelty or stimulation to be satisfied. Rather, they've learned to meet their own needs without external influence. But there's something deeper here, something about how these people learn to relate to the world. Many people strongly prefer staying home developed this orientation early, and often it stemmed from a specific type of childhood experience. Imagine a child coming home to an empty house after school. Parents are often not home. No organized activities for them. No one to ask how was school. As soon as they walk through the front door of their home, just silence. They need to figure out their own afternoon. What does that child learn? What do you think? They learn that home is their territory, their controlled environment, the place where they don't have to perform for anyone or meet anyone's expectations or fake a smile. They learn to entertain themselves, to find satisfaction in their own planned activities, to create their own structure instead of relying on external influences, and crucially, they learn that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. This is the foundation many homebodies are built on. Radical self-reliance within a safe, controlled space. When you grow up essentially raising yourself, yes, I said raising yourself, for a significant part of the day, you develop a different relationship with solitude. It's not something you fear or avoid or feel lonely about. It's your natural state, your comfort zone. Home becomes psychologically coded as the place where you're most yourself, where you don't have to manage other people's expectations or their energy, where you're free. And once that state is established, it rarely changes. You know why? Well, it's simple, because they don't want to. There's another psychological pattern at play. The need for environmental control. People who strongly prefer staying home often have low tolerance for unpredictability, which relates to when you leave your house. You surrender control. You can't control who you'll encounter, what problems will arise, how long things will take, whether you'll feel comfortable. At home, you control everything. Temperature, lighting, noise level, who has access to your space, when you eat, what do you wear, whether you want to communicate with anyone or not. And often, this need for control developed due to early experiences with lack of control. Children who grew up in unstable environments, high divorce rates, economic uncertainty, unpredictable family dynamics, rejection at school, learned that the outside world is chaotic and unreliable. But their room, their house when parents weren't home, that they could control, so they created order within their controllable space. They developed routines. They made their home environment exactly what they needed it to be. And as adults, they simply continued that pattern. Home is where they can create perfect conditions for themselves. Leaving means accepting imperfect conditions imposed by others. The choice is obvious which of these two they choose. Let's talk about something homebodies rarely admit out loud. They don't have the energy to leave their homes. The smile when you run into a neighbor, the how are you exchange of a few words, quick conversations before meetings, the appropriate enthusiasm when someone shares news you don't really care about. These small performances accumulate, and people who never want to leave the house are often those who are most aware of and most drained by these constant performances. They look at social interaction with clear eyes. They recognize that most social exchanges are scripted performances. not genuine connection, and they've decided that ritual isn't worth the energy. This often stems from a particular psychological orientation, low tolerance for inauthenticity. Many homebodies were raised in environments where they learned to trust actions over words, where they watched adults behave one way in public and differently in private, where they developed a finely tuned detector for nonsense. So when they're expected to participate in the same performative social rituals they see as empty, they resist. Why pretend you care about the weather when neither of you actually cares? Why, when no one has time to listen to you or you to them? For example, how many times has it happened to you that when you meet a friend in town, you ask each other, "What's new?" And you tell him, and he tells you nothing. Or that well-known phrase, "Hey bro, I'm in a hurry, we'll catch up or I'll call you." And of course, nothing comes of it. So why fake enthusiasm for plans you're already dreading? Why participate in elaborate social theater when you can simply not participate? At home, there's no need for performance. You can be exactly who you are, feeling exactly what you feel without managing anyone's perception of you. That authenticity, or more accurately, that freedom from required inauthenticity, is psychologically priceless for homebodies. There's another element crucial to understanding homebody psychology: a deeply rooted need for privacy. People who never want to leave the house often have strong boundaries around their personal life, their space, and their time. They don't broadcast their activities on social media. They don't feel the need to document experiences to validate that they happened. They don't need witnesses to their existence. This privacy instinct often develops in childhood, especially for those who grew up in environments where privacy was limited, or where they learned that external visibility came with unwanted attention. When you're a latchkey kid coming home to an empty house, you have something rare: complete privacy. No one supervises you, no one controlling you, no one commenting on your choices, no one demanding explanations for how you spend your time. That privacy becomes precious. It becomes your psychological base, your security that you don't want to lose even as an adult. And that's why you fiercely protect it. Leaving the house means surrendering privacy. It means being seen, being available for interaction. It means your appearance, your behavior, your very existence becomes subject to others' observation. For people with strong privacy needs, this feels like exposure, like vulnerability. Home is where they can completely let their guard down, where no one is watching, where they don't have to curate, manage, or explain themselves, and they don't have to pretend to be what they're not. Why would they voluntarily leave their security? Here's something interesting. Many people who never want to leave the house are actually highly competent at managing external demands. They're not avoiding the outside world because they can't handle it. They're avoiding it because they've become so efficient at handling necessary external interactions that they've optimized them to an absolute minimum. This is the competence paradox. They've mastered online grocery delivery, remote work, digital banking, and strategic social management to the point where leaving home genuinely isn't necessary for most of their needs. When you grow up solving your own problems with limited resources, you develop practical competence. You learn to find solutions. You become good at systems, processes, and optimization. As an adult, you apply that same competence to creating a life that doesn't require you to do things that drain you. Need groceries? Need social connection? Carefully selected, infrequent, high-quality interactions with people you genuinely like? Need entertainment? You've built an entire ecosystem at home. The outside world sees this as avoidance. Homebodies see it as efficiency. Why waste time on low-value activities when you can create high-value experiences in the comfort of your own space? Perhaps the most defining psychological characteristic of people who never want to leave the house: they don't need external validation. They don't post their activities for likes. They don't go out to be seen. They don't collect experiences to prove they're living life right. Their self-worth is generated from within. This is rare. Most people derive at least some sense of worth from external sources: social approval, visible success, others' perception of their lifestyle. Why would they, like everyone else, record on social media where they're going, what music they're listening to, what they had for breakfast, and where they're traveling? Homebodies don't, and often this came from learning early that external validation is unreliable. When you're a child raising yourself, there's no one consistently providing validation, no one to praise your achievements, notice your efforts, or affirm your worth. So you learn to generate your own sense of accomplishment, your own sense of worth, your own internal scoreboard. You finish your homework, you know you did it well, you make yourself dinner, you feel satisfied by your self-sufficiency. You spend an afternoon reading, you don't need anyone to confirm that was time well spent. This internal validation system becomes so well developed that external validation starts to feel hollow. What does a stranger's approval matter when you already know your own worth? What does social media validation add to an experience you genuinely enjoyed? Nothing. So why chase it? Home becomes the place where you can simply exist without performing for external validation, where your worth isn't determined by how many people saw you or approved of your choices. Here's why this psychology matters now more than ever. We live in a culture that constantly pushes external engagement. Go out, be social, network, experience things, document everything. Prove you're living your best life. Honestly, I think these people are very sad and unhappy if they're posting everything on social media. Smile, click for a picture, and the smile quickly fades while waiting for likes and comments about how happy and fulfilled you look. And now compare that to people who never want to leave the house, quietly opposing that entire system. They're saying, what if home is enough? What if quiet contentment is more valuable than curated experiences? What if solitude is a choice, not a problem to solve? In a world struggling with burnout, social media exhaustion, and constant pressure to do more and be more, homebody psychology offers an alternative model. A model where you prioritize your own energy over others' expectations, where you create a life that truly fits your needs instead of performing someone else's idea of a good life, where you're sufficient unto yourself and don't need constant external stimulation to feel alive. This isn't antisocial, it's selectively social. The psychology of people who never want to leave the house is the psychology of security. It's a mindset built on early experiences of solitude that taught them home is safety, control, and authenticity. That external demand is draining, that their own company is not just acceptable but preferable. They learned to meet their own needs, to generate their own contentment, to build a life that doesn't require constant external input to be complete.